Welcome back everyone. This is Ayad Budyab and we are continuing our AngularJS course. In the previous video I talked about filters and we saw how we can use them through our exercise, but in today's lesson I'd like to explore that in a little bit more detail. I'd like to see how we can work with dates, can filter dates, right, and how we can work with currency and the number. We explored also uppercase, lowercase. We need to see how we can work with limit to and things of that nature. So as you can see, the page on the in front of you right now is pretty much similar to the one we discussed before. We have the HTML on the top with the ng app. This will bootstrap the application for us. So Angular would treat this one as an app and it will basically do its work behind the scene where it sees like the double braces. It would know that this is some type of binding, right? Double curly braces. It will see ng model, it knows what it is, and so on. And in the actual input in here, we're asking the user to type some text, and this is the ng model of entry. So we can use that like we've done in the previous exercise. We have a table with the table header being the first name, and then in here we have the table body that we can fill it out with some information like we'll see shortly. And then down here, of course, we're referencing AngularJS so we can get the functionality we're looking for from Angular. So that's how our page looks like right now. And let's go ahead and look a little bit on the Angular website to discuss a couple of things before we come back here and we start doing our work. Here's the Angular website. I have angularjs.org, of course, and I have in here under the develop, I have the API reference. If I go to the API reference, I would see the list of functionality that I need. For example, the functions, and there's the directives, and so on. If I keep scrolling down, I should be able to see the actual filters that I need. And as you can see in here, it says filters, and here are the filters that we're looking for. There's currency filter, a date filter, and filter. This is basically when we need to filter by the entry like we did previously. We have the JSON filter. We have limit to, lowercase, number, order by, and uppercase. We already experimented with some of those, but we'll see how they all fit in one exercise, and we can explore those in a little bit details. So that's about that. So we know where they are. We know how we can find more about them. Now let's go back to the actual exercise and do some work with that. Okay, so now I have my my Angular app in here, and I have the body, and then I have the actual div. Now in the div in here, I need to initialize it like we've done before, ng init, right? This is the way we initialize, ng init, and we can give it some data equal, and then here's the double quote, right? Inside that ng init, I'm going to put the array for the people. Previously, I put the array for the people with a name and an age. I'd like to add a salary to that, so I'll take that from the application, and I'm trying to paste it here. So right now I have the people equal array of objects. Here's the first element. We got the name, salary, and age. Same thing for the rest of the information. Okay, so this represents an actual list of people that I can use in my example. And then I have the input in here with the type text, and then ng model would be entry. And I have the first name representing the first name of the person down here that I'd like to display. Now in the actual body, I'd like to use the ng repeat, okay, because I'm going to repeat this over all the elements within the array. So ng repeat, and then equal double quotes. Now for the repeat, I'd like to go through all the individuals inside the people's array. Okay, so I'm going to say for each of those person in people, spell that correctly, for each person in people, and then I'm going to display some information about them. Now that information is inside the TD in here, right? So that would be a TD, and then close that. I need, I would say, 5 of those. So let's put 5 of those columns. Okay. All right. Now for each one of those, I'd like to display some information. In here, we know that if we need to bind to something, we need to use the double curly brace, right? So here's the double curly brace, and here's the closing one. Now inside that, I need to display the person's name because I'm referencing to every one of those people as a person, right? So for that person, I'd like to do person.name. Where we've seen that, right? We know that how we can get that individual and how we can bind to that element within the array. But now we know that we can pipe to that and say uppercase, or if you want lowercase, right? So either way it would work because we have both of those filters supported. And again, the way we filter that is by taking the person's name, do the pipe and the actual filter. And as we will see later, we can create our own filters so we can work with that. But that will come later on in the course. So for now, then I can say person.name, and I can feed that to the uppercase filter, and it will turn it uppercase. Again, I can do the same thing here, and then I can do double curly brace, and then I can say person.age. No surprises here either, right? I can display that person. And then down here, I'd like to get the person's salary and then put that into some type of format. Now, the way I work with formatting that data, and the same way I showed you here, I have currency and I have number. Okay, let's see here. So if I can bind to that person's salary, and then I'm going to put it inside here, person dot salary, and now I can use the pipe, and then I can say currency. So that will put it in a currency format. Okay. Now underneath it, I'm going to put the person's salary as well, but use the number format. And then pipe it into, make sure this is closed properly. And then in here, pipe it into the number. Now the nice thing in here, as far as the number is concerned, I can specify an input to the number. It's as if, think about number like a function, and then you need to pass it some parameters. We do this using a colon. So now I can say colon 4. That means I want this number in 4 decimal places. Okay, and again, you do this by specifying the actual colon in there to represent that number. Okay, so now the next thing then, let me just make that font a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on. The next thing then is I get the person's salary, I put that in a currency format, I put that in number format. One other thing I'd like to show you here is that it doesn't have to be the actual data from the person, because I can say, for example, that I want the number 500 and I need that in number 2. So this is going to be 2 decimal places for the number 500, right? Because these expressions within the curly braces are being evaluated. In this case, it's a numeric value. It's fed into the number. It's formatted, placed into decimal places. Okay, let's go ahead and save that. And then up here in the header, we have ng repeat, we have person and people, and then we're displaying that data. Okay, let's go ahead and save. And we know we have the path. I'm going to show you different ways of doing this later on in the course, but let's paste that here. And now I have the first name, Mike, but of course I can add columns to this, but I'm just trying to show you the formatting. So I have the actual age, right? And now I have the salary, and you notice how in currency format is being displayed as 28, comma 000.00, and you see the numeric one also 28, comma 00, but 0.4 zeros, because as you recall, we made sure that the number in here is actually 4 digits after the decimal place. Now the next thing is, you notice that the currency is based with a dollar sign. Now I didn't indicate that that's a dollar sign, but that's read from your locale, right? If you have, for example, Spanish locale, it will show you the Spanish sign for the currency. But in this case, it picked up my local locale, and it's the dollar sign. That's what you can see displayed on the screen. Now again, there's a difference between the actual currency formatting and the number formatting. Notice how 500 was displayed also with number 2, so there were 2 decimal places for that 500. And I also put in a big number up here in the array. You notice that salary, I just paste in a huge number just to show you how that will be formatted. And you notice that every 3 digits you get the comma being placed, right? Again, here and here all the way to the end. The difference, in here you get the dollar sign, in here you don't get the dollar sign, and you get the formatting the way you want to. And again, since in here I indicated 4 digits, and you notice that there are 4 digits after the decimal. So keep that in mind when you're trying to do filtering on the actual data. Now, of course, you can go back here to the person and people, and you do like we've done last time by specifying the filter on the entry. You specify order by the age. We've done this before, right? We saw how that worked in the previous exercise. But what I'm trying to do in here is add one more thing. I can take this person and people and do pipe, and then I can use the limit to filter. The limit to filter, after that you indicate how many records you want to limit that to. So for example, in this case, I'm using ng repeat. I'm repeating over the elements in the people, right? I have 5, 6 of them or so. And then I'm going to say in here limit to 3. So that should be limited to 3 records. This is the licensing for the software, don't worry about it. So we have the limit to 3 digits, and then when I try to display that, try to reload this, and then it should be able to, let me F5 that, it should be able to show me the 3 records that I'm interested in. Why? Because I limited that to 3 records like you saw with the limit to filter that I applied in here on the people's array. Okay, now let's look at the other functionality that we have. We have the date, right? So we saw how we can do order by, how we can do filter, that were part of the previous exercise. We saw how we can work with limit to, right? And we have uppercase, lowercase. We saw the differences between currency and number, right? We saw those two. And now we need to see how we can work with dates. If you take the web page that we were looking at, and we saw in here the filters that we have, let's look at the date one. The date one should display for me the actual date filter and its functionality. You see in here it says format a date to a string based on the requested formats, and you see in here that you have many different formats that you can work with. You see all those formats in here and how things get displayed. So all these are the formats that we can work with. You get like the short, full date, long date, medium date, short date again, medium time, short time. All these are part of the usages for the date filter. Let's go back to the code in here and see how we can add to that functionality. Now, one thing that I can work with, let me go back here outside the actual table, and let's try to put, say, for example, an HR here, just to differentiate it from the table. Let's start with a div. Close the div. And in here, inside that div, remember, I'm still inside the outer div, so I can still have access to the data. And then what I'm going to do in this case is paste the a date and try to format it. Now remember, JavaScript, which that's what Angular uses, JavaScript uses dates as a number of milliseconds since I believe 1970 or so. So it just gives you that huge number that represents the seconds, and you can treat that as a date. Okay, so if I use the curly braces in here for binding, and I paste a number like this that represents the number of milliseconds, and then I pipe that into date, what do I expect to see, right? And let's try to refresh that page here, and you can see it gives me July 1st 2093. This represents the number of seconds, and of course that's a big number, so we end up with the year 2093. That's no problem, as long as you know that this is how JavaScript treats the dates. These are the number of milliseconds, and you end up with this format. Now let's copy this over and paste it down here. And now let's say what else we can do with this. Now I know that I can format it as a date, but I also know that if I use the colon, it's as if I'm passing parameter into that functionality, right? And then in here I'm going to say treat this as a format it as a medium, or filter it as a medium date. Okay, what else can I do? Let's select instead of working with simple numbers with the dates, let's see what other functionality we can use. Let's copy this a couple of times and paste it here and here. Now instead of working with a big number, now you saw how you can do this. Let me just in here place the place an actual date. Okay, so instead of the numbers, let's try for example 2014 and then do January 2nd. Okay, that's a date. Well, let's put that correctly, 02. That's a date that I can work with. And let's copy this date over and place it down here again, because I'm going to use it again down here. Okay, so 2014, and let's maybe make this one 28 and maybe February 28. Okay, now I can use the medium like I did in here to filter that, but I also can use something like full date, right? We saw this on the website on the different formatting that you can use. And let's say for example this one I'm going to use short time. Okay, this again different way of displaying that date. All you see in here is the one of the date formats being piped into date, the second one being piped into date but displayed as a medium format. This is another date that I chose and being piped into date, but I need it to be as a full date, and one that's being piped into date but short time. Okay, make sure that's saved, and let's go with to the page and make sure we refresh that. And as you can see, this one displayed for me the actual date like it is up here, but being displayed as a medium. And you notice how it is July 1st and then with the time to it. And then I displayed the 2014-01-02 as a full date, and you notice how it was displayed like that. And then you get the short time, and you see how you get the 12 a.m. for that specific date object. One more thing, let me go down here, and I miss still the JSON, right? I need to see how I can format using JSON. Now JSON, you do this when you're trying to debug something, right? Because it will display for you the data in JSON format. So that's just one way of debugging your code and trying to figure out what's going on. So let's start with a div here, and then let's close that. And let's say, for example, open the curly brace, close the curly brace. I'm doing the binding. I'm going to take the people's array as is and pipe that into, I'm sorry, I missed that, pipe that into JSON. Okay, so I need the people's array, which comes from up here, and I need that to be piped into JSON filtering. So let's go ahead and save and go back to our code and reload that, and you notice here's the actual array being displayed in JSON format with the key value pairs, right? Now, of course, there are different formatters that you can Google on the internet and figure out different formatters for JSON. You can take that data and paste it in there. It will display it for you in even nicer format than what you see here. But you get the point. This is how you can actually display some data in your variables so you can figure out if there are any bugs or what's going on with the data. Okay, so that's how I can work with filters. Let's go ahead and move to other subjects with AngularJS. So please stay tuned for the upcoming discussions. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Ayad Boudiab, and you